My husband disappeared 2 years ago, or so everyone believed. They never found his body. The Coast Guard searched for 11 days after his kayak washed up empty on Lake Superior's northern shore. 11 days of watching men in orange vests drag the cold water while I stood on the dock wrapped in a wool blanket my neighbor Ruth brought over, holding coffee I never drank. After 11 days, they stopped searching. The detective who came to my door had kind eyes and an apologetic voice, and he said the words that were supposed to end everything. Given the water temperature, given the current patterns, given how long it had been, I buried an empty casket on a Tuesday in October. The maple trees along the cemetery road had gone the color of fire, and I remember thinking that my husband Raymond would have wanted to paint that. He painted on weekends. Landscapes mostly. Quiet things. His name was on a headstone now, and his clothes were still in our closet, and I was 63 years old and alone in the house we had shared for 31 years. That was 2 years ago. Last Thursday, my daughter called me on video, and in the background, just for a moment, I heard his laugh. I want to tell you that I handled what came next with grace. I want to tell you I stayed calm, asked the right questions, said the right things. But the truth is, I went completely still, the way you do when your body understands something before your mind is willing to. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my reading glasses on and a crossword puzzle half finished in front of me, and when I heard that laugh come through my daughter's phone, I felt something move through me like cold water. My daughter Ashley is 34. She lives in Portland, Oregon, about 2,000 miles from where I am in Duluth, Minnesota. We talk every Sunday, sometimes more. She visited for Thanksgiving last year. She brought wine and a pie she made herself, and we sat together at the table where her father used to sit, and she held my hand when I cried a little after dinner. She is a good daughter. I believed that completely. I still believed it when I heard that laugh. "Who's there with you?" I asked. I kept my voice even. I am a retired nurse. 32 years, mostly cardiac care. I learned a long time ago how to keep my voice even when everything inside me is moving fast. She shifted the phone. On the screen, I could see she was in what looked like a kitchen, white cabinets, a blue dish towel hanging from the oven handle. I did not recognize the space. "Just a friend," she said. "We're making dinner." "That's nice," I said. "What are you making?" She told me pasta. She told me about her week. She laughed at something I said, and for the rest of that call I sat in my kitchen in Duluth and smiled and asked follow-up questions and said good night and I love you, and then I set the phone face down on the table and I sat there in the quiet for a very long time, because the laugh I heard was Raymond's laugh, not similar to Raymond's laugh, not reminiscent of it. Not the kind of thing where grief plays tricks and you hear the dead in strangers. I was a woman who had shared a bed with a man for 31 years. I had heard that laugh at breakfast tables and at parties and through closed bathroom doors and in the dark. I knew it the way I knew my own heartbeat. A little low, a little sudden, like he always surprised himself by finding something funny. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself that for 4 days. On the 4th day, I called Ashley and got her voicemail and left a message about nothing, just checking in, just wanted to hear her voice. She called back 2 hours later, and I listened very carefully to everything in the background and heard nothing except traffic outside a window and a television somewhere, and I thought maybe I had imagined it. On the 5th day, I called my friend Donna, who has known me since our children were in elementary school together, and I told her what I had heard. I did not frame it as a certainty. I framed it as a strange thing that had happened, and I was probably being foolish. Donna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Margaret, what do you want to do?" That was the right question. What I wanted to do was get on a plane. I did not tell Ashley I was coming. I told myself the reason was that I wanted to surprise her, that it would be a nice thing. A mother showing up with good coffee and pastries from that bakery she likes near the airport. I told myself that right up until I was sitting in seat 14A, watching Minnesota disappear beneath the clouds, and then I stopped lying to myself and admitted that I was coming because I needed to know. I had not been to Ashley's apartment since she moved 18 months ago. We had been meaning for me to visit. There was always a reason it hadn't happened yet. She had been busy with work. I had been managing the estate, the house, the endless paperwork that follows a death, even when there is no body to prove it. We talked every week. We texted. I knew what her apartment building looked like from the photos she sent me when she moved in. Brick exterior, a green door, a coffee shop on the corner. My Uber driver dropped me at the corner at 11:15 on a Wednesday morning. I stood on the sidewalk with my overnight bag and looked at the building and felt something I could not quite name. Not fear exactly, more like standing at the edge of something with no way to see the bottom. I went inside and took the elevator to the third floor and knocked on apartment 304. It took a moment. I heard movement inside. Then Ashley opened the door. She was wearing a sweatshirt and her hair was up, and she looked beautiful the way she always does, my daughter who got her father's cheekbones and my stubbornness, and her face did something complicated when she saw me, just for a fraction of a second before she covered it. In 32 years of reading patients' faces, I had learned to catch fractions of seconds. "Mom," she said. "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you," I said. I watched her face again. Something moving behind her eyes, quick and calculating before she smiled and opened the door wider and said, "Of course, come in. This is such a surprise. Let me just is always the tell. Let me just is always the tell. Let me just means someone needs a moment to manage something." I came inside. The apartment was nice, warm. She had her grandmother's quilt over the back of the couch. There were plants in the window and good light and a half-empty coffee cup on the table. A man's jacket hung on the hook near the door. I looked at the jacket. It was gray, fleece-lined, the kind Raymond had worn on the boat in cool weather. There was probably 1,000 jackets like it in Portland, Oregon. I looked at it for 1 second and then looked away. Ashley was talking, saying how wonderful this was, how she wished she'd known I was coming. She would have cleaned up. She had a work call in an hour. But after that, she was completely free. Did I want tea? Did I want to sit down? "Is someone else here?" I asked. She stopped moving, just for a beat. "No," she said. "Why? The jacket?" I said. "Oh," she glanced at it. I've been seeing someone. He was here last night. He forgot it. Who is he?" Something moved across her face that I had not seen since she was 17, and I caught her in a lie about where she'd been on a Saturday night. A specific kind of guilt that belongs only to people who love you and know they are hurting you anyway. "Mom," she said. "Ashley." She sat down. She sat down on her couch and she put her face in her hands, and she stayed there for what felt like a very long time. I did not sit. I stood in the middle of my daughter's living room and I waited, and my heart was doing something loud and strange behind my ribs. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I kept trying to figure out how to tell you." The room went very quiet. "He's alive," I said. Not a question. She nodded. One small, miserable nod. I had been a nurse for 32 years. I had sat beside people receiving the worst news of their lives. I had learned how to be still in those moments, how to let people feel what they needed to feel without flinching away from it. I used every bit of that training in the next 60 seconds. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning." She told me. Raymond had not had a kayaking accident. Raymond had been in serious financial trouble, the kind he had managed to hide from me entirely for almost 3 years. Business debts, poor investments, a second mortgage on our home that I had not known about. He was facing the kind of ruin that would have taken everything. The house, the retirement accounts, what was left of our savings. He had not known how to face it, and he had not known how to tell me, and so instead he had chosen a third option that I never in 31 years would have believed he was capable of. He staged his own death. He had help. a man he knew from years ago, someone from a chapter of his life before me. That man had connections to people who knew how to make these things happen. A kayak left on a shore. A story made consistent. A body that was never going to be found because there was no body to find. He had been in Portland for 20 months. Ashley had found out 8 months ago. I looked at my daughter who had held my hand at Thanksgiving while I cried, my daughter who had called me every Sunday, my daughter who had stood at a gravesite over an empty casket and wept, and I had held her, and I had thought, at least we have each other. 8 months, I said. I know, she whispered. You knew for 8 months. He told me it would destroy you to know. He said it was kinder. He said it was kinder. I repeated the words slowly. And you believed that? She was crying now. She said his name. Dad, she kept saying. Dad came to me. Dad explained. And every time she said the word Dad, something tightened in my chest like a hand closing into a fist. Where is he? I asked. She shook her head. Ashley. My voice had gone to a place it went occasionally in 32 years of nursing, when I needed someone to understand that I was not asking anymore. Where is he? He was staying at an extended stay hotel 6 blocks away. He had been there for 3 weeks. He had come to Portland, Ashley told me, because he was sick. Something with his heart. He had not wanted to die, and here the cruelty of the word landing in a room where we had both believed he was dead was something I cannot fully describe without seeing her. Without, she said quietly, seeing me. I picked up my purse. Mom, please don't. I'm not going to do anything you need to worry about, I said. Which was true, though not particularly comforting. I need you to give me the address. She did. She followed me to the door and tried to say something, and I turned and looked at her and she stopped. I walked 6 blocks through Portland, Oregon on a Wednesday morning in November. The air was cold and damp the way it is there, different from the cold at home, softer somehow. I walked past coffee shops and a bookstore and a woman walking a small white dog, and I thought about the empty casket under the maple trees and the 11 days on the dock and the detective with the kind eyes, and I kept walking. The hotel was unremarkable. Beige carpeting in the lobby, a small Christmas tree already up near the elevator, too early for it. I gave the name Ashley had given me. He was registered under a different name, which somehow I had already known without being told, and I said I was his wife. The woman behind the desk did not question it. Maybe she saw something in my face that suggested she should not. Room 217. I stood in the hallway and I thought about 31 years. The apartment we lived in when we were first married, where the radiator made a sound like someone knocking. The February he drove 4 hours in a snowstorm because I was sick and scared and newly far from home. The way he looked at Ashley when she was born, that specific helpless love on his face, the kind that changes a person permanently. The painting he never finished that is still on an easel in our garage. The grave with his name on it. I knocked. A pause. Movement. And then the door opened. He had aged. His hair was fully white now, and he was thinner than I had ever seen him, and there was a yellowish tinge to his skin that told me, with my nurse's eye, that his heart situation was more serious than Ashley had let on. He was 67 years old, and he looked older than that. He looked at me and he went absolutely white. Margaret, he said. Hello, Raymond, I said. I stepped inside because I was not going to have this conversation in a hallway with beige carpeting. He tried to speak several times. He said my name. He said he was sorry. He said he had not known what else to do. He said he had thought about reaching out so many times. He said he had wanted to. He said the situation had grown beyond what he'd planned. He said the words I think he had been rehearsing for 2 years, the explanations and the apologies, and I sat in the chair by the window and I let him say them all. When he was finished, I asked him 2 questions. The first was about the second mortgage, the house that I had lived in for 31 years, that was in my name as much as his, that I had believed was mine. He told me about the debt. He told me the numbers. I had been a nurse, not a businesswoman, but I understood numbers well enough, and these numbers were significant. The second question I asked was this: "Did you think about what this would do to me?" He said yes. He looked me in the eyes when he said it. I will give him that. He did not look away. He said he had thought about it every day. He said it was the thing that had kept him up at night for 2 years. He said he had told himself it was better, that I would be devastated for a time, but then I would be free, that the life insurance payout would take care of me, that eventually, life insurance, I said. He stopped. I had filed for the insurance payout 14 months after his disappearance. Once the death certificate was official, $120,000 that I had put in an account and not touched because spending it had felt like closing a door I was not ready to close. He had known about the payout. Of course he had known. I understood in that moment, with a clarity that I've only experienced a few times in my life, that the financial devastation he had escaped had not actually escaped him. It had followed him, and the insurance money, which he had planned for, which was part of the equation he had calculated while he was busy deciding that faking his death was a reasonable solution to his problems, was still sitting in an account in my name. I stood up. "I'm going to need you to stay in this room," I said, "for the next few hours. Margaret, I have some calls to make." I walked out. I took the elevator down to the beige lobby with its premature Christmas tree, and I walked outside into the cool November air, and I called 2 people. The first was a lawyer in Duluth, whose name I had gotten 2 years ago during the estate process. He was very calm when I explained the situation. He used the words fraud and insurance and criminal, and he told me what I needed to do and in what order. The second call I made was to the Portland Police Department. I want to be precise here because I know what people will ask. I am a woman who spent 32 years caring for strangers. I am not a cold person. I was on the phone with a detective for 20 minutes, and at no point did I feel nothing. Raymond was the man I had loved for 31 years. He was sick. He was in a beige hotel room 6 blocks away, and he was frightened, and he was not the person I had believed him to be, and he was still, somewhere underneath all of this, the man who drove 4 hours in a snowstorm because I needed him. I told the detective everything I knew. Then I went back to Ashley's apartment. She was sitting on her couch with her knees pulled up and her face raw from crying. She looked young, the way she used to look when she was small, and something had hurt her, and she didn't understand why. I sat down beside her. "Mom," she said, "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "He made it sound like he said telling you would cause more pain than he was wrong," I said. "And you knew he was wrong. You've known it for 8 months." I paused. "You let me hold you at that graveside, Ashley. At Thanksgiving, all those Sundays." She was crying. She kept saying she was sorry, and I believed that she was. I believe that what my husband said to her made a terrible kind of sense when she was standing in front of him in shock, face to face with a father she thought was dead, and that she made a choice she has regretted every day since. I believe all of that. It doesn't mean the choice didn't happen. "I love you," I told her. "That is not something that changes. But I need some time." I stayed in a hotel that night, not the one Raymond was in. I booked something clean and quiet with a window that looked out over rooftops and the gray Portland sky. The police went to room 217 that evening. I will not pretend that what came next was simple or clean. It was not. There were lawyers and conversations and processes that stretched over many weeks. The insurance fraud investigation was serious. The financial deception was serious. I had to make decisions that I had not expected to make, and sign papers that I had not expected to sign, and there were days when the grief of it, not just the betrayal, but the 31 years of believing in someone who turned out to be capable of this, was genuinely hard to carry. Ashley was not charged with anything. She had not participated in the fraud. She had concealed information, and she had to sit with the weight of that. We talked on the phone 6 weeks later, a long, careful conversation. and we have been finding our way back toward each other since. It is slow. Some things, once they are known, cannot be unknown. But she is my daughter, and I am her mother, and I think we will get there. The house in Duluth was complicated. The second mortgage was real, and the debt attached to it was real. But my lawyer was skilled, and there were aspects of what Raymond had done that had legal implications for the financial instruments he had created without my knowledge. I was not left with nothing. I was not left with everything I thought I had, but I was not left with nothing. Raymond's heart was serious. He is alive as I sit here telling you this story, but he is not well, and he is facing consequences that are also serious, and I have made my peace with the fact that both of those things are true simultaneously. I hope he recovers. I also hope he answers for what he did. I am old enough to understand that hoping for both of those things at the same time is not a contradiction. What I know is this. I am 63 years old and I live in Duluth, Minnesota, in a house that is mine, with a half-finished crossword puzzle on my kitchen table most mornings, and good coffee and the cardinal that has been coming to my backyard feeder for 3 winters now, so reliably that I have started to think of him as a neighbor. I went back to work, part-time, at a clinic near my house. I had retired because Raymond thought it would be nice, and I had believed him, and it turns out I missed it. The work, the patience, the particular satisfaction of being useful in a room where someone needs you. I go on Tuesdays and Thursdays and some Friday mornings, and I come home tired in a good way. I have not repainted the garage. Raymond's easel is still there, with the unfinished landscape still on it. I look at it sometimes when I get something from the shelves. I don't know yet what I will do with it. Some decisions don't need to be made before you're ready. I think about the life I thought I was living for 31 years, and I think about the life I was actually living without knowing it, and I try not to stay in that particular room for too long. It is not a useful room. What is useful is the Tuesday morning at the clinic, and the cardinal and the crossword puzzle, and my daughter's voice on the phone on Sundays. More careful now, both of us more careful now, learning what honesty between us looks like when there is nothing left to protect. Donna came over last Saturday and we made soup and watched a movie, and she did not ask me how I was doing because she knows me well enough to know that if I want to talk, I will talk. That is the thing about friendships that survive decades. They know which silences are fine. I am fine, not in the way people say it when they mean the opposite. I mean something more specific. I mean that I wake up in the morning in a house that belongs to me, in a life that belongs to me, and the ground is solid under my feet in a way that I can feel. I mean that I know now exactly what I am capable of surviving. I mean that I stood in a hotel hallway in Portland, Oregon, and I knocked on a door, and I found out the truth, and I made the calls I needed to make, and I am still here. Some people might ask if I would have rather not known. I was a cardiac nurse for 32 years. I watched a lot of people make the choice to know and the choice not to know when the news was likely to be hard. The ones who chose to know were not always happier in the short term, but they were always better able to decide what to do with the time they had left. I chose to know. I always will.